My videos aren't very polished, I know. It would be much easier if I felt I was doing this with someone else and we were collaborating and I could actually write a script. But I don't. This is all me and no one else. I made a mistake in that video I made several mistakes in that video about LETs and decentralized autonomous organizations. One of them was I called the Law Commission of England and Wales, or is it the Law Commission for England and Wales? I called it the Law Society. I don't know why that pattern crept in somewhere and I can't get rid of it. I wrote to one of the authors of that study and she said, "Oh, do you mean the Law Commission?" I thought, "Oh yes, I did." So these things are important. But she says she doesn't work for the Law Commission anymore. She works for Bristol University. And I looked at her research and it seems to be on derivatives or some kind of higher financial what do they call it, instrument. Maybe it was managed funds, this kind of private equity shenanigans, the kind that BlackRock are engaged in, taking money from pension funds and investing it in building contracts, probably building contracts and Israeli weapons companies. But my mistake about the alt and seek was an interesting one, because it's actually an example of what I was talking about. It doesn't matter whether you call them conjunction or disjunction and conjunction, or union and disjoint union and intersection, or what are the other words? Lub and glib, meet and join, all these dualities. It's really the dualities that contain the structure. And that's, I mean, I still don't get the Oneida lemma. Kurt Jaimungal has done a Substack post on the Oneida lemma, which I'll read. Or is it? It's gone. Sorry. These local Let's groups, people are really into the social aspect of it, but well, my experience of it isn't up to much.
Thank you.
It's okay. It's not really worth that much. There's some deer. But to me it just all seems like a pantomime. It's as if this little group, maybe this is just my powers of abstraction are not good for me, but this little group of people trying to run a let scheme seems like a kind of pantomime that they're playing out for global geopolitics. And if that's the case, well, they're being very clever about it. They're showing all the same signs of global geopolitics down at the level of a group of 380 members. It is just a kind of fractal structure, and people are able to make these connections without any training, without even reading the introduction to Eugenia Cheng's book. They're putting on these theatres all over the place. And everyone says, oh no, I don't understand category theory. I don't understand mathematics. And they don't, I suppose. I don't either. I can't write down the Oneida lemma, the statement of it, never mind the proof. But I actually think there's a simpler statement of it. I think if you start with a functor on infinity categories and you do something sensible about the way you define truth or correspondence, then it'll work. But and it will be understandable at a kind of linguistic, syntactical level. The thing is writing down what I mean by that. That's proving to be a bit more difficult. I need to chew coca to be able to do that. I can't chew coca here because there's a plant passport and coca will never get passed by my cousin who works at Heathrow, and it's her job to decide what plants are allowed into the country and what aren't. Isn't it an amazing coincidence that I ended up volunteering in Harrow for a group of people building a grey water drainage system in the woods on the common at Harrow Weald, and the person that was running that project, lo, she works at Heathrow in the same department as my cousin. Just a coincidence. So this local currency group, any local currency group is you're immediately going to be in debt to the people who develop your system, because you can't start trading until someone has spent 200 or 300 hours setting up a system. So immediately your community is in debt to the tune of 2,000 or 3,000 units of currency to the people that made it possible for you to start trading, just because the software is so hard to develop. And I think that gives you the reason why people at Cambridge University don't want to teach their undergraduates proper mathematics. Because they like people groping around in the dark, in John Arbuthnot's terms. They like people groping down the dark because they've got all the candles. And if you keep all the candles to yourself, you can run the show, and the kids can't even work out that you've got something. People who read my blog post don't recognize Y Combinator. They don't know that Y Combinator was the venture capital company that funded OpenAI, and half of them don't even know that OpenAI is the company that made ChatGPT. I'm just so sick of the farce. Let's all pretend that nothing bad is going on. All these professors from Stanford who crossed the Atlantic to work with Robin Milner just did it because he was a lovely guy.
Not that so tiny and
And I'm told that people get upset when you talk about this stuff. People get upset and start writing in all caps. Nobody writes to me in all caps. Unless they got their keyboard mixed up. I've had one. I got one message from a Russian woman in La Paz, and it was in all caps except the first letter of each sentence was in lowercase. So I imagine that she had the shift lock down. She had caps lock pressed and couldn't be bothered to retype it. See, if you had a symbolic representation in your buffer of the keystrokes, you could just go back to the beginning and remove the caps lock on character, and the rest of the sentence would come out right. But with most word processors, some might have a reverse case option, but you've still got to select all your text and reverse the case of it after you've made that mistake. But it wouldn't do to have a caps lock on character appearing in a text buffer. So, who wants to spend 200 or 300 hours just installing another big glob of Drupal code that's going to have the same problem in 5 years' time? And probably has it now. I can't imagine that all those millions of modules that Drupal can drop in are all secure and perfectly integrated. This just again would be another, there would be more 200 hours of effort, and it would just be an albatross for someone to maintain until it was no longer supportable, and then they would carry on for another 5 years afterwards running the pile of junk. And this is happening at national levels. This company VFS Global, they're in the same situation. Their development workload is way over what the developers are capable of maintaining. Their user interfaces and their apps and their whole business is an online business, and it doesn't work. And they're actually the gateway for several countries, including I think the Netherlands, are actually issuing their passports through that system. Well, that's just incredible to me. That company has the ability to deny somebody from the Netherlands a passport just by making sure that their web interface screws up. And the company's in Dubai somewhere. What kind of a system is that? What kind of position is that company in? And that company used to actually be part of the British government visa application process. That's how they got their initial funding. And the South African government handed over their entire passport for overseas passport, and probably, for all I know, the domestic issue of passports. Although they sound more switched on than most. I mean, apparently in South Africa the government runs a national ID authentication service, which is some kind of pluggable service which you can install in a website. So in South Africa, fintech websites can use government authenticate, government credentials, government issued credentials to authenticate members of the public. But now VFS Global can't handle certain passport renewal requests. They refer you back to the Home Office, and the Home Office don't reply to their emails. Well, do I know that they don't reply to them, or they don't receive them, or they reply and I don't get the response? I don't know. It could be any of those things. Because we don't have secure communications anywhere in the world. But it's not a problem. It's not a problem that any university should bother itself with. Makes me fucking sick.